Hello, how you doing? It's just going to be a wee kind of short one this evening. This came up. I'm subscribed to a channel called the Institute of Art and Ideas. They have wee debates and different things going on. So I started to watch this, and I go, 20 minutes into it. There was some things said that I thought would be worth highlighting. So it's called What is Truth Today? I'm basically discussing, science and what people class as truth or facts, worldly facts, and whatever else. Anybody that knows me, I think that it's clear that there has to be a separation between interpretation of things that you can't quantify properly. Things that we can access in 3 dimensions, for me, we can establish facts. There is a definite, cause and effect relationship with objective reality. And we are subject to that reality, regardless of what anybody's beliefs and ideas are. So I thought I'll go through this, just maybe the first 20 minutes, we'll see how it progresses. But I'm going to sit and watch the football. So, at the very latest, I'll be over here at 7:45. So we'll see how far we get through it. But the first 20 minutes is pretty much, where I had got to. And it kind of tickled my attention. So we'll have a wee listen to it. And I think it's important, it's not that it's important maybe to me or anybody else, but it's kind of relevant that these people now are starting to address some of the fundamental assumptions and the pomposity that they've displayed for, as far as I can remember. It's went too far now, and at least they're starting to wind their neck in a wee bit and have a look at what they're postulating as factual and scientific and all that stuff. So anyhow, let me see here. So as I've stated so many times, there's a huge difference between interpretation of visible phenomena and creating models based on interpretations. I don't live my life by models and interpreting things that I can't get to understand fully. There's no requirement for me to do that. Stuff like the luminaries and the things above us, they were there first and foremost. People can't get to them, so they interpret what they think they're seeing and they build what you would call a model. But that doesn't represent what it actually is and what's actually going on. And then they'll say, but I can predict that it's going to be daylight tomorrow morning. But what does that mean? So, anywho, there's a huge difference between things that you can actually quantify and move around in 3 dimensions than things that you can only see. But we'll play this. There's a wee interesting bit that I thought was astounding. I see people there, how he's all doing alright. I'm going to get into this. As usual, I'm just going to pause it and whatever else. Screen box. Should be us. Can we see? So fair use and all that rubbish. This is just a review of a public debate.
Interpretations. And 50 years since Thomas Kuhn argued that facts were theory dependent. So, facts have not had a great press. But it's essentially a more...
Hang on, sorry.
In a world obsessed with Trump, alternative facts have not had a great press. But it's a century and more since Nietzsche claimed there are no facts, only interpretations. And 50 years since Thomas Kuhn argued that facts were theory dependent. So, is an insistence on the facts the prejudice of believers in their particular truth? Do we have to give up the idea that facts decide?
See, this is the thing, they don't separate what they're talking about with this. There is no facts, what they say, Nietzsche said that there's no facts, there's only interpretations. Well, these people run away with themselves, they forget that they're adults, and it's like they don't think out of the box. Again, a newborn child that's on its way home and is part of a car accident is going to be damaged. Regardless of that child, doesn't have beliefs and interpretations or any of these things. So it's like they don't define what they're talking about when they're bringing this stuff up. There is an objective reality, and you are subject to it. Regardless, as I say, what anybody wants to believe and wish and fantasize about. If you're hit by a fucking speeding train at 200 miles an hour, you are going to become flying fucking mince, right? That's not up for debates and interpretations and all that crap, right? That's physicality interacting with other physicality and causing severe damage, right? So, I really wish they would clarify some of this a lot better.
The matter are facts essential to science and progress. Without them only chaos reigns. I want to introduce my three speakers. On my immediate right, and there's no political implications about this at all, is Barry Barnes, who's a sociologist and co-founder of the influential Strong Programme, an approach to the sociology of
fast speed
scientific knowledge described by inheritors such as Bruno Latour as unparalleled in its importance for the field. He's an advocate of the post-Kuhnian approach to scientific knowledge and is interested in the distinction between objective facts and intersubjective agreement. You can ask him what any of those words mean at a later stage. On my extreme left, if that's the right word, is John Ellis, who's a Maxwell Prize-winning theoretical physicist. He's made important contributions in many fields of inquiry, including particle physics, astrophysics, and cosmology.
Particle physics, astrophysics, and cosmology. Imagination land, pretty much.
Joanna, I've got it wrong again already. Kavetna.
Well done.
Sorry. She's an award-winning writer for The Guardian, Huffington Post, London Review of Books, and many others. Her latest book, A Field Guide to Reality, recognises the importance of philosophy and believes that philosophy should be accessible to everyone.
Well, yeah, exactly. It is accessible to everybody, and so is proper science, practicality, and referencing practicality between each individual, because that's where it belongs. It doesn't belong to, a wee clique or groups or PhDs or any of that stuff. Okay? I've got the same apparatus as these people to experience the phenomena of living.
Well, I'm going to start with you, Joanna. Whether you think that an insistence upon facts is, in a sense, a religious position adopted by true believers.
So there's a line in a novel by Dorothy L. Sayers, which I'll begin.
So again, there's no context here. They're just facts and what are they talking about? You have to separate what there is facts, as I've just highlighted. It doesn't take, a genius to realise that there is facts that you can't escape.
She writes, facts are like cows. If you look them hard in the face for long enough, they generally run away. And so I want to look at
So if we look long enough at somebody being hit by a train going at 200 miles an hour, eventually they'll no turn into mince or something. They'll just bounce, apparently.
Term, even just this little word, fact, hard in the face. And as soon as we do, we see like so many words, it's full of ambiguities and echoes and even contradictions. There's the understanding that we might initially have of objective reality, the actual objective truth, the facts. But then there's also a meaning from the Anglo-French, faits, and fait, j'ai fait, this sense that something's happened, somebody's done something. And this suggests a subjective reality. And this is really important to the debate because...
But there is, again, I don't know why it has to be extrapolated in great depth. Maybe it does. Maybe people don't fully understand the separation of the subjective and the objective. And that's up to each individual to recognise that. As I say, we all have different preferences. It's an objective fact that I'm here speaking to you right now. But subjectively, some people like me, some people don't. Some people hear this, some other people hear that. But there is objectivity to what I actually am and what I'm actually saying. But some things can be subject to people's interpretations. So you have to define it properly and what we're actually talking about and make it crystal clear. So as I've put out there a lot through this whole process, that there has to be a separation, there has to be a filter process of separating subjective and objective. Okay?
It's incredibly difficult to disentangle an objective truth. There's always someone within it, there's someone observing it, there's someone looking at it, someone experiencing what's going on.
But it's no difficult. This is what, I don't get this. It's difficult. It's no difficult if the two of us stood in front of the fucking train station and watched somebody getting splattered like a bug. There's no ambiguity or any confusion in there. A 30 fucking ton train going at 200 miles an hour splattered a 15-stone man. It's very simple.
The combination of elements in this word fact, I think, are really important to the debate. And if we were objective and trans-temporal, then we could stand aloft and we could wave ourselves above this reality that we're all in and look across time and space, then it might not really help, because we'd find that through the ages, many things have been hailed one moment.
She's jumping now to, seeing the whole of reality as a whole and being able to pinpoint it and understand it like that. But we're within it, we're part of the effect of the reality experience. But there is things that we can observe and we know happen that are factual, that we can call objective fact. That she's interchanging this. She's now talking about, removing herself from the reference frame of this experience.
Fact, and then hailed as a fiction the next. So if we alighted in the 1840s, for example, we'd find that germ theory was definitely not a fact, it was a fiction, which was really irksome to poor Ignaz Semmelweis, who was trying to propound it as a serious and factual theory. The poor man was told he was mad, which he wasn't, but then actually he got so insanely angry about being constantly told he was mad when he wasn't, that he went mad. And so he ended up dying in an asylum, which is a very sad fact. Meanwhile, though, if you went off again on your celestial...
It's a sad fact, but she probably never experienced it. She wasn't there. So then again, how is it a fact to her? That's just her opinion. That's subjective. She chooses to believe a narrative or something that was written down or an account of something, which, is no set in stone. There, you can see that could be an interpretation, subjective, make of it what you will. Unless she was there and actually experienced it, she doesn't know.
Critical, and you came back to the 1880s, you'd find that germ theory is a fact. And Louis Pasteur, who's the progenitor now, is having a much nicer time. And he's being awarded the Legion of Honour and generally being hailed as a great propounder of a fact. And this happens with so many theories, with the ether, which, as John can tell you, is a fact 1 minute, a fiction the next, then a sort of adjusted fact again, and then a fiction, with ideas of women not having enough strength to run long distances, which was ostensibly a fact throughout the whole of the modern Olympics, until finally in 1988 they were given parity and allowed to run the marathon, and that so-called fact became a fiction. So I'd say... Again,
they're obvious subjective opinions that she's talking about. They were not stated as facts. It was just opinions.
As we continue in our quest for knowledge, which is so important, there is this question of when is a fact a future fiction and when is a fiction a future fact?
When it's something that's interpreted that you don't fully understand because you can't access it in the full 3 dimensions to break it apart and understand it properly. So again, it's like no clarity being made by interpretive facts and real world 3-dimensional tangible facts.
And I think we should look facts in the face in this quest, and we should also remember maybe Chuck Palahniuk, the novelist, his argument that you can build an entire wall with facts and obscure reality in doing so. Thanks.
Exactly. Apparent facts, like we live on a space testicle that came from a infinitesimal singularity that expanded and created everything. That obscures and puts a wall over reality.
It's cool enough in here to want to get your hands clapping. Barry?
No.
Same question to you, if you would.
Yeah, well, in the debate, I'm going to urge caution in the face of facts, whether they're pressed on you as verbal assertions or pointed out to you as features of the world.
And that's very wise. That's what we've seen. I've seen continually people trying to impose word salad, rhetoric, interpretations of intangible, visible phenomena. Again, highlighting the fact that what can you experience? What can you actually know? Don't let anybody impose on you and make you believe or sway you into thinking something's a certain way until you can know it and understand it for yourself.
But first of all, there's this question to reflect on about them, about believers, and the question's too difficult for me, so I've decided to answer another one.
Oh no, you get contributors like this.
My question is, why would believers speak of facts at all? And they do so, in my view, out of a need to sustain their beliefs as knowledge.
Exactly. And again, wise words. That's my experience of going to academia and these students of university and questioning, fundamental beliefs that they have, and then trying to, come to some sort of reason with them and understand the processes of reasoning and why they hold that belief. And you see that they don't have a clue. They just regurgitate mantras and things that they've heard in order to reaffirm the belief that they hold to be true. It's not annoying. They don't understand why they believe it or if it's actually true. And that's what the education system is perpetuating, as far as I can see.
And they've got that need because shared knowledge is necessary for living with other people, as in human beings always do, everywhere, and for coordinating the actions of those people. And it's this that makes "how do you know" a more important and urgent question than "why do you believe?" Even if you're a believer yourself, that's the more important question. How do you know?
Exactly.
Now, a brief history of the world will fill this out.
We've got about a minute and a
Oh,
half.
that's great. In ancient times, priests looked to authority to sustain belief.
And that's still the case right now. What do we see? You believe you live on a globe. Why? I was told so.
And they invoked the epistemic authority of sacred texts or deified rulers.
Sacred texts and deified rulers.
In enlightened Europe, philosophers rejected faith in authority and turned to reason instead. Use of reason could lead us all to a single truth, so Kant told us. It soon became clear that the inner voice of reason spoke differently to different people and could pull them apart as easily as bring them together. Well,
Again, that's true to things that we can't fully understand when things are being interpreted. There's aspects that are not up for interpretation. They just are what they are.
moving on a century or so, when groups of paid professionals called scientists first emerged in the following century and competed for positions in the hierarchy of occupations, they challenged rationalists to turn away from sterile, internally directed reflection, open their eyes and look around. Everyone has access to the world beyond the eyeball with their view of things, and we can all get together if we look at that world and hope to agree on what the facts are.
Exactly. So what he's just said there is not just what you think you're seeing and what people are telling you that they think you should be seeing or what they think they're seeing. You've got to go beyond just your vision.
Preferably the facts known to scientists themselves by direct experience. But never mind, you check things against facts that way and identify what...
Again, as I've always stated, it's got to be based on experience. Why would you take things to be true? Why would you invest belief in something? There's no requirement for me to invest a belief in anything. It's useless to me.
Checked as facts themselves. Well, since that time, facts have been widely cited as the epistemic basis of empirical knowledge, although the credibility of this misconceived view is currently in decline, not least within the sciences themselves.
Aye, but again, separating the sciences, what we're talking about, formal sciences, social sciences, the natural sciences, because when you separate those, you can see that. Because in the social sciences, culture, psychology, there's no defining fact there. It's all interpretation and working to try and further understanding through different processes. There's no definitive answers to any of it. So psychology and all these things are like pseudosciences because they're dealing with metaphysics. Same with mathematics, formal languages. But when we come to the cold, hard reality, there's no interpretations to be had there. unless it's only something you can visually see, and that's it.
From physics to biology, scientists now increasingly rely on models and on statistical methods.
Which they shouldn't be doing. What does a model mean?
As the foundations of their ways of knowing. And that means they no longer find it necessary to talk of facts or truths.
Exactly. Exactly. So what do we always see? Oh, the globe module. My module works. My imaginary celestial sphere thing works. It's just a model of your interpretation of what you think's happening.
It was very cunning of
What bodies of water do bend because my model and my pictures on the TV. Well, actual reality shows me something different. Oh, you're an idiot. You're a retard. Water runs downhill, collects up and forms a free surface. It's a horizontal plane. What a retard. My model doesn't say that. My model says it's bending.
me to leave the only real scientist on the panel.
The only real scientist. The man's a fucking theoretical dipshit. Playing on fantasy notions. Again, this hierarchy in these statements. Are you scientist? This man's nothing different from me or you. Absolutely nothing. So if we're talking about the objective reality, the three-dimensional space that we share, and the objects and substances within, we are all qualified. Every single one of us.
To the last, not least, I assume, to defend facts.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to defend facts.
This will be great. He's got to defend facts here. Pay attention.
Objective facts, not subjective facts, not sociological constructions, not...
He's just said no subjective facts, no sociological constructions. Right? Wait to hear what he comes out with.
Ways to keep societies on the same page. So, you hold up an apple, it falls. That's a fact. If you do a particular experiment at the Large Hadron Collider, you find something. That's
something.
A fact. There's a question of interpretation whether that's really a Higgs boson.
So they're observing some sort of phenomena, and then they're interpreting what they think's going on.
Or something else that's still being debated.
This is a man that's classed as the only real scientist amongst them.
But you do define something. Society is on the same page.
I'm just playing that again.
So, you hold up an apple, it falls. That's a fact. If you do a particular experiment at the Large Hadron Collider, you find something. That's a fact. There's a question of interpretation whether that's really a Higgs boson or something else. That's still being debated. But you do define something. There is an objective fact there. So
an objective phenomena. There's a phenomena happening, but you usually just try to interpret it and coming up with all sorts of waffle.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be so sort of old-fashioned and sort of 19th century.
It's very charming.
Yeah, I may look like I come from the 19th century, but actually not quite. So, of course, my anachronistic defense of the existence of objective facts has to accept the fact that they have a very limited range of applicability. So, we can discover facts in the laboratory. We can establish them. But once we get outside the laboratory, even if facts do exist, it can be very difficult to figure out what they are. Let me give you an example. So there probably is a fact corresponding to whether Trump or Hillary Clinton got more votes in that election. Whether we can actually establish the facts is a different story. In the preamble, there was a bit of discussion about Thomas Kuhn, who I think is a great guy. But I would take the Kuhnian
Let me
approach.
just say, because I don't know how much any of you know about Thomas Kuhn. He writes a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, where in effect what he says is the way revolutions in science happen is by the changing of paradigms, by the frameworks within which knowledge is articulated, rather than simply in the fact that we get more knowledge. We get a different worldview into which, as it were, the facts get articulated.
Well, like existential narrative stories, is that what you mean by paradigms? Right? Because bodies of water no bending doesn't change through paradigms and all that stuff. People's interpretations and existential storylines are changing because they're fucking bullshit.
Yeah, so I'm old-fashioned enough to believe that.
It's like all these aspects of living with these people, it's all intertwined. It's like there's no separation of each avenue and what they're actually talking about.
No, yeah, I like paradigms. I've lived through a couple myself. so that bit of what he says, I agree with. But the idea that in some sense they are arrived at, the facts are themselves sociologically determined, which I have a sneaking suspicion Barry might be wanting to say.
Are there? Like facts that were, amoeba morphed into human beings that came from a fucking expansion 14.5 billion years ago and all that.
I would not agree with. The way in which those facts are uncovered, I agree, has a sociological element, but facts are facts.
What I'm interested in is there are certain things, for instance, if I look at the sky.
This is brilliant. Remember what this guy on the right to you has just stated, right?
I cannot tell whether the Earth goes round the moon or the moon round the Earth. There are theoretical frameworks within which these facts always operate.
So what he's talking about is that, we can all agree that there's a fact that there's visible phenomena up there. We can all agree that. Nobody denies it. But where we disagree is when people start interpreting what they think they're seeing and what they think's going on. Because again, two-dimensional, visible phenomena and making up assertions and interpreting what you think you're seeing is just there's no establishing facts.
Well, actually, this question of whether the moon goes around the Earth or the Earth goes around the moon.
I was going to get this.
No, you're going to get into trouble here.
We're going to get into trouble here. You're not allowed to question any of that.
So in fact, they both go around the common centre of gravity.
But it's how
They both go around the common centre of gravity. Theoretical dipshit here that's just been appraised as the only real scientist is now talking about metaphysical and visible stuffs again. Everything goes around the centre of gravity. It's just word salad. Doesn't even mean anything. What's he talking about? Where's your real world fact? Where is your word salad attached to some tangible substance that you can demonstrate to me so that I understand the mechanical aspects of what you're waffling about? Doesn't have any.
you learn that. You learn that. You can't learn that by looking.
Spot on, my man. You can't learn it by looking.
Right. On the other hand, the fact that the Earth is not flat is...
Where did that come from? On the other hand, the fact that the Earth is not flat, it's a bit out of the blue, that, is it no? Santa? Where are you getting that from? Santa Claus? Where do you hear this?
something that you can determine by looking.
Well, you can determine that it's not flat by looking, according to theoretical, nonsensical, drivel fantasy man. I wonder what he's going to say.
You can see a ship disappearing over the horizon, for example. Right?
Huh? Fucking scientist! You can see a ship going over the horizon. He's just sat there trying to defend facts. Now he's talking about visible phenomena and making assertions about what he thinks he's seeing. Does this man understand the human eye fully? Does he understand perspective? Light? All that stuff? I fucking bloody well doubt it. But here he is, Mr. Scientist Extraordinaire, making idiotic assertions. out of the blue bolts of the Earth's definitely not flat. And you can establish that by looking. Oh, really? Well, what happens when it's inconsistent, mister? And when different people from all walks of life are getting inconsistent, contradictory results of looking?
Barry, do you want to respond to the implicit jibe?
Well, all I would say is I had a fortunate start to my career. My boss had just made an atlas of radio stars, and I think it had 110 radio stars listed, and they were pretty well all that were known at the time. It was a long time ago. I think there were about 25 of them still around. So I got the feeling that there's a certain transience about facts, and those that remain on the list, there's no guarantee they'll remain for all of time. They may croak it themselves at some point, depending on...
Exactly. And just going back to this guy here, this guy, you can establish it by looking, right? This guy is supposedly a scientist, but yet he's not smart enough to understand the substance of water that he's viewing over, to know how preposterous it would be to even, postulate that it's curving downwards away from him, and that it's no flowing, and that the water's got the ability to maintain this bend upon its surface. I mean, how much of a fucking retard do you need to be? How much of a dishonest delinquent do you have to be to just ignore that and jump straight to, I see something, so therefore I'm just going to reaffirm my bias and interpret it to fit my bias? Like every other cult zealot that we see. Scientist.
Field goes and what people agree on, saying when I went and studied genomics in the 60s and compared it with genomics 40 years later.
You should explain what genomics is.
Genomics is the study basically of the long strings of DNA, which are now for the most part, molecular genetics, the successor field of genetics studies. Anyway, they both show you facts disappearing all over the place. And I think facts have a half-life, and it's probably about a few years, the half-life of a scientific fact.
Aye, but again, we need clarity in what we're actually talking about here. Because these supposed facts that are only interpretations without a full understanding will change as understanding progresses. Right? But, go back to, the example that I was given of a car crash or somebody being hit by a train or some physical substance and its interaction with some other physical substance. These things aren't going to change. We're always going to make hammers out of fucking metal.
Whereas, if you call them that, I don't think there are any anyway, but never mind.
I just think the pomposity and the hubris of this academia has got so far up its own arse that it can't separate what it's talking about anymore. It's just all a hodgepodge of fucking craziness.
Okay. As far as Donald Trump's concerned, just
I wondered when he would arise in the conversation.
In a Trump tweet, if there are any, is about 24 hours.
Let me start with you, John, and widen out from what's been
See,
said.
there he's given an example of a man and his subjective opinions, and that can, that's no fact-based. That's in the realms of subjectivity. That's in the realms of social science, where, you can't establish unwavering, unchanging real-world facts, right? But the real world and its substances and their interactions and behaviours, they're not going to change. Unless the workings and laws of reality are rewritten by the omnipotent fucking overlord. Breathe in water, you'll fucking drown and die. That's not going to change. Unless, of course, you grow some gills.
Because so far, facts have been largely an issue of the academy and arguments within it. And Nietzsche...
Why are they having arguments? Why are they not fucking clever enough to just lay it out and go, right, let's have a look at this here, what are we talking about? Alright, right, let's separate all this stuff. Right, no, there is real world facts and we can give examples of that. Now, where are the doubts about that? And then let's look at these doubts and categorise it. Right, okay, well that doubt's not about real world facts because they're not going to change. You're not talking about subjectivity and social sciences and all that stuff. So, of course, these things are going to change because they're not exacting. And neither's your interpretations of visible stuff that you think you're seeing. They're no facts.
130 years ago says...
It's a fact that I can demonstrate the behaviour of the substance known as water. And it's a fact that you can verify that for yourself. And it's a fact that we apply it in everyday practical living. And it's a fact that it doesn't change.
There are no facts, there are only interpretations. Now, I interviewed Steven Pinker, who's a psychologist.
I don't know why MD entertains that. There's no facts, there's only interpretations. Again, what are you talking about? Of course, there's no facts in regards to visible, right? Because that's interpretation. But there is facts. If I slap you in the face with a smelly fish, it's going to sting and you're going to stink a smelly fish.
Who hates Steve Bannon, but he told me that Bannon did no more than read Nietzsche. So, do we just assume...
Stop reading all these bufters. Start discerning for yourself.
Bannon, that politicians...
He's there, I'm dead interested. What's this guy got to say?
are flexible with facts.
Well, hang on. So I need to go back.
I missed that. Hold on.
30 years ago says, there are no facts, there are only interpretations. Now, I interviewed Steven Pinker, who's a psychologist who hates Steve Bannon, but he told me that Bannon did no more than read Nietzsche. So, do we just assume, Joanna, that politicians are flexible with facts?
Well, hang on.
And so is academia.
I need to go back, though, slightly, not all the way into the academy, because that would be too far back, but I think, so the reason we're even asking these questions is because there's this, we're all in this sort of hangover from Descartes. We can really blame him for a lot, I think, the fact we're having this debate. And this whole kind of hangover...
The fact you're having a debate because you keep putting your attention to fucking morons that lived 200 years ago and all that. Think for your fucking self, missus. And the rest of you. That's how you're in a pickle. Because you're basing all your understanding on what you read in a fucking book.
Dualism. This idea that there's this sort of world out there full of Trumps and Bannons, and it's all sort of over there. I mean, really over there as far as we can get it, ideally, but there's a kind of world over there. And then there's consciousness all the way over here, which is appraising and seeing and dividing this world into facts and fictions and apportioning. And this is a really odd idea, this idea that we're not part of the thing that we're assessing. And in loads of mythologies and theories and Eastern mythologies, there's an idea you have the knower and the field, and they're completely the same thing. You can't extract one from the other. In fact, in many philosophies, of course, the knower is the preeminent aspect. Everything comes from the person, the consciousness that's seeing everything, and that's a hugely valuable tradition. But still, for some reason, we're kind of in this odd idea that you can just separate the two, and they're not just part of an enormous continuous whole. And I think that's... So when you ask...
There is a separation. As I say, you can interpret, there's a cup of tea on the table. It's objectively there. And two of us can verify that it's objectively there because we can see it, we can touch it, we can smell it, we can taste it, we can quantify it, we know that it's there, we can move around in 3 dimensions. Then I take a drink and I go, that's nice, that's lovely, nice and sweet, I like that Earl Grey tea. And then the other person drinks and goes, I don't like that. It's too sweet, don't like Earl Grey. Right, well there's subjectivity. There's their interpretation of what they experience of the objective. Are these people really getting paid all this money to try and figure this supposed big complicated thing out?
These realities, there's this. That actually, I think, is so interesting because it shows how so many realities are created. We get these words suddenly, and they percolate into our consciousness. The world kind of goes right in and influences, and we all think all day ostensibly about Brexit, 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 Trump, Trump.
Stop thinking about that, Jobby, then. That's probably why you're confused. Sitting there will be a bunch of other confused morons. Because you're putting your attention to utter crap.
But that can be, also resisted on very valuable grounds that you could also assert your own right to apprehend the world in a different way, accepting, if we have to then, that we're going to in some way influence enormously the way that we perceive reality.
You avoid.
Reality is what it is. Your subjective interpretations and your experiences are there for your subjectivity. How somebody else feels about the world around them is different from how I feel about it. But it doesn't change the objective aspects that we're both a part of.
Avoided the question.
Are all politicians?
No, are
purveyors
all
of
politicians?
fake facts?
No, yeah. I mean, do we just assume that they're playful with facts, politicians, or is Trump something constitutionally different?
Well, Trump's got so there's an interesting thing that Trump's doing, and that's why I think people bring in Orwell. People saw that Trump's inauguration was sparsely attended. That was series of eyewitness accounts. That was people's subjective reality. They went to it. They said the stands were almost empty. There was no one there, and they saw that. Sean Spicer came into the White House.
So was that a fact?
Well, that was their experience. That was their feat, their fey. They were there and they saw.
Well, how's it? It's a fact then. If I go to a fucking stadium that's got 60,000 capacity and there's only 10,000 people there, I can see the empty fucking seats. I can go to them and touch them and go, oh, there's nobody there. What is this woman talking about?
Come on, John.
It was a fact.
It's like they overcomplicate things with a pseudo-intellectual hubris.
In journalism, that would be enough. You'd have lots and lots of eyewitness reports. There'd be sources.
I don't need eyewitness reports. If I wasn't there, it's irrelevant to me. If I go to Celtic fucking Park, I can quite clearly see there's an empty seat. I was there. There was nobody sitting in the seats. Fact. If I go and tell somebody, it's not a fact to them, because they weren't there. They're just taking my hearsay. Then it's interpretation. Then it's not a fact to that second party. My God, why do these people try and make everything so complicated?
Sean Spicer came in with his supposedly glittering objective facts of numbers. He came in with these absolutely made up numbers and said these are the objective facts. Because they're numbers, they're really reliable. And he asked everyone to stop believing in their own experience, actually, what they'd actually seen. He said, no, I've got these, there were actually fewer people numerically than at Obama's inauguration. So that was an interesting reversal, actually. He was pretending that these were objective realities.
Barry?
I'll just respond to this. Another way that Trump has handled facts could be raised. You might remember the notorious remark of Trump's.
We're trying to separate, objective facts and stuff. Now you're waffling on about people's.
That a certain judge in California was a so-called judge. And it's a brilliant remark. Politicians don't do that sort of thing, but it invites you to think, what's the difference between a so-called judge and a real one?
None. They're both actors. Playing out a concept, an idea, a structure.
The real judge is part of the social order. What is it? And what it is just...
The social order's just an idea.
Other people calling that person a judge. That's the only difference. So Trump is, as it were, pointing to how people are constructing statuses through their speaking. And he points it out beautifully. And that is in great need of being pointed out. And if that's part of reality, then reality is constructed, and the whole damn lot in the world.
No, reality's not constructed. Social constructs, civilization, ideas like that are constructed. Again, that has to be separated from when we're talking about the objective, cold, hard world. He's talking about social science stuff here. This is bizarre.
The statuses, in other words, the whole of the social order is, if nothing else, if there may be something else in the physical world, But the social world that the Germans call reality in their language is socially constructed.
Of course it is. It's a social world. It's the world of human beings and their ideas and ways of thinking that they should live life and structures that they fabricate and make. They're just ideas, they're just concepts. They're no objective truths. They're no rooted in anything transcendent. But again, that has to be separated from the cold, hard, objective world and made clear when people are talking about it. Well, again, I don't know why they have to have this big debate and all this. Oh, what's happening, chicken?
And then I'm in the truck.
You playing with the truck?
Yes, well.
That man's saying the truck's maybe not there. You're just interpreting that the truck's there or something. I think it is there. I can hear him moving it about. Some of these people might say, it's just his interpretation. No, it's definitely there. What colour's the truck, Carly?
Green.
Says everything's green.
Good old Trump.
You also know that you say something and it becomes true. That sort of thing increasingly, that just by its reiteration. So that's, and you know, that's the kind of use of, there's a really interesting tradition of relativism, but then you sort of kind of convert it into a sort of political weapon where you say, well, you know, anything can be said because nothing's true. So therefore, you know, it doesn't matter if I can't corroborate. So you say, you know, the caravan going through Central America has Middle Eastern people in it. And you have no source, but you say that and actually it kind of develops a sort of reality.
Yeah, hearsay. Again, pointing out the fact that you can't take things on second-hand, you know, information because you're no there, you're no experience it. You have to then ask yourself the question, why am I even placing relevance upon it? Why am I placing my attention towards it? Why would I want to try and put anything internally in there when I can't experience it? What use is it to me? There's a caravan in North America with Asian people on it. Couldn't give a fuck. What's that got to do with anything?
And that's, again, something that he's utterly aware is possible.
Look at the way he whiplashes the stock market.
But what they're pointing out is exactly that. This is the societies and the structures that we live in. It's all hearsay. It's all authoritative figures, hierarchies, authority telling you stuff. And people just going, right, okay, authority said sure, that's true. And just regurgitating it. Why do you live in a globe? Authority told me, seen it on my telly. I'm intellectual and windswept and academic and all that.
Scientist?
Stop calling him scientist, he's a moron.
Well, I think your original question was something along the lines of, have politicians always been liars?
Well, I put it much more delicately.
Is that just a fact that you're going to say? We can all agree.
Well, because the BBC, for whom I'm working with, is obsessed with the sense that Trump is of an order of a politician different from other politicians.
Well,
I'm just asking the question whether my dear employer is right or not.
Well, let me rephrase the question, or maybe rephrase the answer. I think that Trump has carried the art of being flexible with the truth to an entirely new level, and you have to.
Right, so, you know, people and their wordage and their rhetoric, sophistry, you know, bending truths, making things out that they're not really, that's you know, that's obvious. Just don't listen to people's words unless you can experience what it is they're waffling about. Has been the whole crux of my walk through this whole period. But again, I don't know why it's so difficult and needs all this palaver to establish that.
Fire, holding your nose, his dexterity with facts.
If I don't go for Trump in the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to stop it here. I think we've established enough, but I'm curious. What's your fingers? What's your finger? Take your thumb out of there.
What?
Take your thumb out of that bit.
What?
You're going to jam your finger if you pull that over.
What?
Interesting you should mention the BBC, because I think the BBC, is one of the broadcasters that actually does a job of trying to check facts.
That's not Disney. Don't talk shite, son. The BBC don't check facts. They push their wee narratives and stories and agendas. regardless of what the actual facts are. Again, total intellectual dishonesty from this cretin here. That's exactly what they're just talking about, saying this stuff and it influencing people that are listening. Oh, scientists say so, oh, he says the BBC check facts, so the BBC check facts.
And they have fact checkers, right, who tell us just exactly what Trump is lying about.
I would like to meet these fact checkers.
His latest tweet. And
I want to ask you a question. So, when the AIDS epidemic happens in America, for 3 years, the New York Times doesn't mention it on the cover. So, here's a big fact. The AIDS epidemic is happening in America. People are dying left, right, and centre. And the New York Times doesn't register the importance of the fact. Now, this is the most liberal of all newspapers. So the big question is also noticing and then discarding facts just as culpable as being flexible with the facts, Joanna? And then I'll ask the same question.
Yeah, I think that the really helpful thing is to argue that there's any standpoint that's going to be completely stripped of bias. You've just explained. You know, we would trust the New York Times a lot more than we trust Trump. But
Again, we're still in the realms of social science bollocks here. I don't need to place trust in anybody. I thought we were trying to establish the difference between real world facts and subjective interpretations and sketchy stuffs. We seem to have went way off here.
Can evince utter bias, and I think that's within journalism to accept that you're going to have a bias within any organisation. That's actually really important, because otherwise you get into a kind of...
Because people have got biases and they'll hear what they want to hear and they'll take whatever they want to take and interpret things that they want to interpret in a social science level. When it's, situations of things that are out with their experience and they're hearing second, third, fourth hand, fifth hand information coming through all different filters before it gets to them. It's the state of mind there of why people would place any relevance upon that type of information processing that is the issue. It's part of this structure that's been built of hierarchy and authority, and that people have got to look to it and to take what the authority tells them. That's what creates the gullible, idiotic mindset of individuals who don't discern for themselves, who are not critical in their thought.
Of absolutes, and that's the danger. You have the sort of the ugly absolute on one side, and then your own sort of virtuous absolute. And I think again that means you're kind of losing a whole philosophical and kind of societal advance, which was to start questioning these monolithic, ossified opinions that had become mistaken for unassailable truths. That's a really important thing to do, politically, philosophically, in any sense. But to sort of start to reclaim that territory. And I've heard people now say you can't be a relativist because that's to kind of concur with Trump, because the Trump and the Surkovian techniques, the techniques in Russia of the theatre of absurd, they're kind of relativism gone, absolutely off its rocker, and so that kind of, I think you still have to question, even though...
Oh, get off of this push.
Of course, is a scientific term which was stolen.
Sorry, it wasn't me.
And relativity per se is a wonderful example of a fact. Actually.
What?
Actually was perfect. If you're in the wrong job, you should get up on the stage more often. Barry, a few thoughts about this?
Well, I don't think he's anywhere near a relativist. He sounds off with facts all the time. Well, that's what he says. So his belief can't be the belief of a relativist. And the trouble is, of course, if you start criticising Trump,
Oh, fucking enough with Trump.
The criticism's got to extend across all politicians.
You're never going to avoid any of that stuff because we've got a structure of authorities and hierarchy and opinions. Because people are misplacing their authority. They're not empowering themselves. They're lending themselves to weak-minded shite. So there's always going to be an issue there.
You start criticising them as well. So perhaps what we need is in philosophy, which is,
Who decided all this? That we have to live as groups and societies, and that we need, you know, a core representative that dictates and decides all this stuff for us. What was the matter with people? This is something that I have real bother with. Why we can't evolve past this shite. And you get all these people constantly try to talk about it as if they're going to fix it. The structure is fucking faulty. The reason being is that human beings should be empowered and discerning and independent as each individual. And if we're not perpetuating a system and a structure that caters to that, there's something wrong. If we don't put our attention to that, empowering individuals, making them independent, self-sufficient, critical, we're going to end up with all this bollocks. Perpetually. Again, academia, PhDs now, can't figure it out.
sadly neglected topic is an account of why some lies are worse than others.
Well, yes, Orwell said, you know, propaganda's okay if it's, you know, for our side, you know, and he actually worked for the BBC during the Second World War, emitting gentle propaganda.
Exactly, as I was talking about last night, propaganda's alright if it's on your side. Referencing the whole pish about, any publicity is good publicity. No. That's only relative to somebody that wants to be famous and notorious and known. And any publicity is good as long as your face is in there and people see your face. But when propaganda's attached to it and they spin you in a negative way, then people are not going to like that.
You know, so of course you can say if Orwell even supports an element of propaganda, then you know who is without taint.
I'd like to come back to the intersection between Trump and scientific facts.
Oh, thank fuck.
And one of the things I find most dangerous about Trump is it's not that he lies about the size of his inaugural crowd or lies about his income taxes. That he doesn't accept scientific facts. The climate is changing. It's a scientific fact that the Earth is getting hotter. You can have a discussion about.
Is it? Well, I live in Scotland, mate. It's not getting hotter. Or drier. In fact, I'm getting less sun. And it's colder in the middle of fucking summer. Had my burner on in the middle of fucking June. What are you talking about?
What are the relative importances of the different causes of that? It's a question of interpretation. It's a fact that it's getting hotter, which he apparently refuses to accept for his own political reasons. And I think that's incredibly dangerous because it's a situation where if we just leave it to go on without taking any action, it could be all...
No, what you mean is that you're backing some process that needs funding. So you create a scenario and situations and manufacture situations so that you can get funding to profess that we're going to fix it. And we'll tax everybody. Keep them in slavery. Keep them dependent. Keep them scared. Tax you. Give you money. Oh, it's all fucked and we'll fix it for you. Oh, you couldn't have any invested interest in that department, could you, sir? No way.
Screwed.
I'm going to ventriloquise President Trump, which I've never done in my life before. But what he says, there's the Gilets jaunes.
I think they're just obsessed with fucking Trump. It started off alright, this. What it's just today, we seem to be, having a kind of decent discussion. Things to highlight. Now it's just obsession about fucking Trump.
In France, I've been wandering round with a poster that says, "You're worried about the end of the world," said a woman with a poster. "I'm worried about feeding my kids to the end of the month." Now, these are both facts, to put it in your terms, John. So the really interesting issue, if I'm that ventriloquise Trump and I'm having to be inventive, he says, actually, the coal miners of whole parts of America are going to be struggling to eat until the end of the month if the kinds of decisions that certain kinds of scientists want to take are taken. Now, you can have different views, but the truth is, the woman holding up the poster saying, I don't know how my children are going to eat at the end of the month.
I'm going to need to skip this a wee bit because it's fucking boring me now.
It's just
Is that the production of coal in the United States for economic and financial reasons. And so, but, dare I say it, the fact of the matter is that, the best way forward for them is to change to doing something else. I'm not a politician. I can't, offer some.
But then you decide, and of course Trump, so what should
so what I'm saying is that there are these two not irrefutable,
But is
they're both.
this really a decision he has to make? I mean,
Well, that decision we have to make. You have to adjudicate. So it isn't facts versus fiction. We're adjudicating repertory companies of facts. Barry?
Well, there are all kinds of issues we've not touched.
Barry looks a bit like me, as if he's losing the will to fucking live. Barry looked as if he was up for some decent discussion, and all I've done is waffle on about Trump for the last fucking half an hour.
Done so far. I ought to say a bit of suppose about why I don't believe in any.
Facts.
Indeed. And I could be deluded about my own beliefs and blah blah.
Wait, but what are you talking about, Barry? You don't believe in facts, what, in social terms? Things that are out with your experience? I would agree. Where I would disagree is that you disagree that there's real world facts. Like, if I pick that table up and fucking smash you over the skull with it, it's going to hurt you.
People think all is illusion and so forth, which is an interesting idea. But,
Oh, you're too violent, Dale. Why do you always come up with violence? Now, alright then, I picked the feather up off the table and I tickled your oakster with it. You would definitely know that something was going on.
if you want to take a look at the key thing about facts, as they're postulated or referred to by other people in theories and models.
Aye, because there's a difference in theories and models when they start telling you they're facts. Theories and models are based on interpretations of things that they don't fully understand. Particles. What's the light one? Fucking, can't remember. Photons. Wee tiny invisible space balls and big massive space balls and 14.5 billion years ago and fucking celestial spheres and all that. They're all models. They're all interpretations.
The key thing is that they can't be evaluated as independent units. They're not there as separate lumps of stuff with nothing to do with each other. You've got to look at the whole...
Exactly. That's what I keep talking about. What's people's waffle? Is it ascribed to something? Some real world thing? So I don't need to listen to their babble. I could just go to the thing and understand it for myself.
Baggage and evaluate the lot at once.
It's like mathematics, and it talks about equations, right? For me, I don't know if anybody else remembers, you had arithmetic and mathematics, where arithmetic was about, numbers that were ascribed to stuff. You don't go to arithmetic and go -5 apples plus -2 apples equals -3 apples. There's no such thing as minus apples. Numbers have to be ascribed to stuff. Or what the fuck are we talking about?
So let me give you, if I understand you, let me give you an example. So simply to say the Battle of Hastings was 1066 only as one unit of fact only makes sense in a wider context of the history of England, the relationship between England and France, at the notions...
No, it's not a fact, mate. It's just fucking stories. Because you didn't live then. It's just stories.
Loss and gain. So that's the degree to which you mean a unit of fact is only comprehensible within a larger
I didn't
story.
say comprehensible, I said it could only be evaluated.
Or understood, which
How can you understand Battle of Hastings and all that? How could you possibly ever understand that?
That's an interesting one, but the key for the moment, I mean, we've only got a minute or two, the key for the moment is that you can only evaluate it all mixed up with a load of other so-called facts, plus a load of other conventional structures whereby we've all agreed to keep something in the place, like for instance in the history of physics, the velocity of light was kept in the place and wasn't allowed to be different from what it was. And then you've got to look at the whole shebang and evaluate it separate as one thing. You can't do it separately. But facts in the way people talk are thought of as units that we can just look at very hard.
Okay, let me
all
ask
by
you a question then.
themselves.
So in that sense, you don't think facts can ever decide the matter?
No, I certainly don't.
Ever?
People decide things, not facts.
Also, do they illuminate? I mean, Werner Herzog said if you want to
This
get
is the
some facts,
filmmaker.
want some facts, go and get the phone directory, the Manhattan phone directory. It's got 4 million correct facts in it, but it doesn't illuminate. There's
There's
a
wrong
load
ones
of
too, probably.
other content. But one last thing on this regime that we've been discussing so much. I do think there's a really weird kind of aspect. Is Kellyanne Conway sort of playing with people as well, where she says something like 2 + 2 = 4, 3 + 1 = 4, glass half full, glass half empty, those are alternative facts. I mean, the sort of deliberate echoing of Orwell,
No, that's just language. Glass half full, glass half empty. There's a fucking glass and there's something in it. Fact. Again, why do they make it so complicated?
2 + 2 = 4 is the kind of thing you assert against a regime that's telling you 2 + 2 = 5, and that's your last thing you cling on to, that this is true.
I've
I
never
mean,
seen
is-
any proof of it anywhere. I've had a look around. Various philosophers
But
have
isn't
had
it
a go.
interesting that Orwell, as a novelist, comes out as a sort of fact checker? He says, actually, I'm going to cling on to this one. And I just think, when these citations, again, they sort of echo with this, it's almost like a sort of deliberate postmodern reference, from a regime that feels it can kind of do this. It doesn't matter. It can make these sort of almost kind of dark jokes, I think, somehow.
Aye, like, say it often enough, you live on a space testicle. You came from nothing, and we're in an infinite void, space vacuum stuff. And then put wee men in fireworks and show them cartoons repeatedly over and over again, and then they'll all start believing it and spouting it like it's fact.
The Battle of Hastings did occur in 1066. That's a fact. It has
What a dick he is. What an absolute twat that guy is. No way you actually know. It's just his subjective bias that he wants it to be true or something.
nothing to do with so-called anything or context or an interpretation. That's
Which calendar are you using this? Which version of time?
What's the meaning of that sentence, John? The Battle of Hastings took place in 1066. What does it mean?
ask them.
No. Clever answer.
Doesn't mean anything to me as an individual man. It means fucking diddly squat. It's irrelevant.
And they're a very clever audience. But I asked you,
The point that I'm trying to
I know what you.
get to is that I think some people are trying to be too clever in terms of constructing philosophical systems which can then be used to cast doubt on things that many people take as facts. They're still facts.
Do we not have to talk the meaning of facts? Okay, in other words, there's a different. 1066 is the Battle of Hastings, is one thing. What is the meaning of that fact? That's not a rhetorical question. What is it?
Well, a bunch of guys, most of them are guys. I think some of them may not be, but probably most of them are guys.
Probably, I think. Probably.
Spent quite a bit of time trying to kill each other, and some of them succeeded.
Some people say it wasn't at Hastings.
That's the point.
Exactly. Just showing this clown up. because he just wants to believe in a particular story.
It may not have taken place at Hastings, the Battle of Hastings.
Also, we've discovered all that you need is for one person to say something, and now, we exactly this thing. Trump says there were some.
So what's highlighting here is the world of language, and having to separate that, where rhetoric's being used and what actually use is it to you. Again, we're talking about the difference between objective and subjective, hearsay, second-hand information, right? There has to be a separation. These things have to be categorised, right? But these people are waffling, right? As I say, it's fucking simple. There is an objective reality. There's substances within it, and there's cause and effect relationships going on. 200 mile an hour, 40-ton train, skeleton you is going to turn you into fucking splatter. Anybody that denies that or thinks it's subject to interpretation, come with me and we go to the fucking train station. And we'll try out your theory.
The Middle Eastern people in the caravan, and it becomes, a sort of a reality. So perhaps, this has just been something that people have peddled throughout the ages.
Exactly. A difference between what people can actually experience as individuals and the realms of hearsay and storytelling. There has to be a definite separation. 100%.
To get back in the celestial omnibus, go back in time and really verify it. That's what I witnesses.
I mean, there's the issue, isn't there, that things that happen in laboratories are replicable.
So guys like him are one of these people that just need certainty. They've deluded themselves into thinking they've got a grasp on certainty, that they've got a grasp on this chronological storyline and that they're part of this storyline. Maybe because he's so insecure, he needs that to feel safe and secure or something. And people like him will assist and insist and perpetuate these types of things. As you see all through different walks of life. People attach themselves to all sorts of irrelevant jobby. See here in Scotland, this divide of the sectarian stuff, Protestants and Catholics, and them all aligning themselves with things that they were never a part of, that they never experienced. But yet they run about with pride and patriotism and battling with each other, and it's just our psychotic lunacy. Because they're like him. They're insecure and they desperately need certainty and identification. And then they join wee groups that reaffirm their delusions. And because they're in wee groups that are reaffirming their delusions, that makes it even stronger in them. They convict to it even more. Bizarre.
In other words,
Except in the Large Hadron Collider,
yeah, but
where they're not replicable.
at my Bunsen burner level,
You've got the Atlas guys and the CMS guys.
But I can't build a Large Hadron Collider in my garden, so I can't replicate. I need a lot of.
but I can boil water and keep repeating it. It will always.
That's right. And you can also use water to, establish levels. We can all do that. But I'm pretty sure they people would sit there defending wobbly rotund oceans because of pictures on the telly. And ignore what he's just said about real world practical references that we can all share between each other and verify.
Break down into H2O as far as I remember. The question is, the moment you get into human life, into human history, it gets much more complicated. Now, are you saying that when you boil water, it's not replicable? Even at that level, there are no facts.
Replicable. Oh, well, replication is very interesting. If you're evaluating a research proposal in science, and it says, I'm just going to go in this guy's lab and do his experiment again for him to check whether he's screwed up or not, you'll never get a research grant. What you've got to do to be exactly the same, to replicate, is to be different.
You didn't, and John just said, he didn't answer the question. Is it true that when water is boiled, as it were, it is replicable? It's a really simple question.
Oh, I only wish it was. You could
Okay,
spend
it
the whole
is.
career studying.
But it is, that's again, some of these people I think just like to be contrarians for the sake of it and like to take that position and just avoid it. As I say, I would take that guy and say, alright, so you think it's no replicable then if I throw you in front of that 200 mile an hour fucking steam train? You're not going to become mince. No.
So why isn't it a simple question?
Because the sameness relationship in the empirical realm is intransitive. If you say this paint's the same as that paint, and then you go on and say, and that paint's the same as this one,
You
you could
keep
start
shifting the
with
question.
red paint and end up with green
No,
paint.
no, but you keep shifting the question.
Exactly.
You want to respond, John?
I don't think there's any need.
This may not have been an Oscar Wilde play, really. As we move towards the moment when the audience has to perform, I want to kind of draw what we've talked together. And Joanna, I had a friend who used to say, facts are free, opinions are sacred, which was to invert the usual view. In that sense, it's the convictions you have, not on what you base them. Do you go that far?
No, I'd say so. First of all, so many things that we hail as facts are potentially ossified opinions. There are opinions that have been reiterated so many times that they have this kind of hardened quality of being unassailable. So I'd just say skepticism and dynamic uncertainty are clearly useful. But I'd also say this idea that a fact has to be sort of proved physically. It has to be a kind of physicalist fact. That's also a very contentious sort of precept, and maybe the imagination could be included as a fact.
Aye, for art, again, this woman waffling. Let's separate them. We're talking about the objective cold world. No imagination. Apply your imagination to art and ideas and all that stuff. But you can't do that to the cold, hard, objective reality. It doesn't fucking change. Believe me, I've tried to imagine my Honda being a fucking Ferrari. It doesn't change. It still takes 25 minutes to go from 0 to 60 mile an hour.
We all have this thing, we experience, our thoughts cause us to do things in the world, they cause physical things to come into being. So I suppose I'd just like the whole thing to be a lot murkier and include psychological states, the imagination, the kind of realms of being that we occupy.
So
No, keep them separate, Hen. Keep them separate. This is where your problems are happening.
what is it, and then I'll ask them, what is it motivates action for you? Is your beliefs?
I think
Sure.
again, the reason I started.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough. I can't get bored. What have you people got to say about this stuff? Yeah, it's your fault, stationary play, buying that shitty engineering fucking plastic crap. Eh? Just went with some real proper engineering. Bought a Honda. I know, Chris, FE, that was fucking hard. Started off alright, kinda. I got into your head, well, Marl Oswald, apparently, that's no, if you pull the trigger on an AK-47 right at somebody's skull, it's open to interpretation about what happens. Apparently. I'm alright, Stallion. I'm alright. Thank you for asking. How's yourself? Total and utter waffle, you're right, Marlon. I'll have a look at that hazmat. Aye, Steve HV is fucking... This is what I'm saying about these people, that it's like they make everything so complicated. I can sit here and I can identify and I can separate, my subjective aspects and what's objective, and I can see it clearly. I don't need all this academic waffle. I could have it in there and sorted it out for them in 5 minutes. Alright, deny there's facts. Here, I've got this baseball bat. The next person that denies that there's real world facts, I'm going to swing this as hard as I can at your temple. I would like to see how many of them would deny that there's real world facts then? Over within 30 seconds. Now that's it, non-schooling. It's like people just don't want to accept that. He denied it. Anybody out there that denies it, if they want to take part in the baseball bat experiment, please let me know. Get in touch. I've got some disclaimer forms that I'm going to have to get you to sign, right? So that I don't get done and that you took part in a scientific experiment and you were willful in it. The baseball bat will be made of wood. It will be solid. It will crack your skull open. So you have been warned. Is objective reality also conditioned reality? No, the ideas and the concepts are conditioned reality. Cold, hard reality is reality. You know, water's wet, fire will burn you. Breathe in water, you will drown. Jump off a fucking cliff, you will splatter on the ground beneath you. Stand in front of a moving train at 200 miles an hour, you're going to turn into mince. But the concept aspects of you know, subjectivity, existential storylines, these are conditioned aspects. So people's, you know, perceptions of what they're a part of can be programmed. That's social engineering. That's in the realms of social science. That's where the separation is so obvious. But people just don't seem to be able to decipher it, to separate it. Why are you leaving, Beth Lou? And why did you feel the need to announce it? Take care. Bye-bye. So I don't think anybody really struggles here to differentiate real world facts and subjective interpretations of stuffs. Quantum mechanics using condom. All right. Oh, have you seen an atom? No, an atom's just an interpretation of what people think's going on. It's an artistic impression of what they think's happening. Aye, you know, this is a part of it, but me, it is trauma. The confusion of life, you know, you were a child as well. You were part of this system where everybody's doing things they don't like. There's dysfunction amongst family members and family units, and you know, all that's trauma. And nobody really knows what's going on, and everybody's, you know, cutting each other's toes to get ahead, and it's all trauma. It's not a nurturing, you know, natural flow. And then, you know, then you've got stories about your existence and the bigger picture that are just disempowering, and it's just a cascade into subservience and delusion and insecurity, and that is all conditioned. These are all psychological and emotional reactions to the situation that we've been born into. And then through that, people start grasping at certainty, ideas and concepts. Any other objections, any other points in regards to what we've just been looking at here? Do people understand that there is an objective reality that's cold, that It's not there to be interpreted. It's not going to change, you know, based on anybody's subjectivity at all. So when people say, oh, this discussion of facts, we have to define what we mean when we're talking about facts. We're talking about, you know, theoretical storyline type facts and you know, that stuff, or are we talking about facts of real world stuff? No persons and subjectivity. Why are you straw manning people, Stallion? Nobody denies that objects fall. Nobody here has ever denied that objects fall. But this is the straw manning of the globe cult yet again. Saying people like me deny things fall. I don't. Still do where I live, Arnold. Why is it that I can see the sun in my sky while Andrew in New Zealand and somebody else in Australia can all see the sun and it's in their sky at the same time, and I'm in the UK, the west coast of Scotland? That's the kind of questions you should be asking Arnold. There's a fact. I can see the sun in my sky, Andrew in New Zealand can see the sun in his sky, and somebody in Australia can see the sun in his sky, all at the same time. How does that work on your globe? What are you going to say about that, Arnold? Is that no making you go, what's going on here? Something's not right. How does what give you measurable proof of Earth shape? Nothing in the sky gives you measurable proof of Earth shape. Absolutely nothing. Well, things do fall on the level Earth. Depends what you mean by gravity. That's where the problem comes in. I don't know, but me. I don't know what's wrong with them. They've just invested in their pseudo-intellectualism and their pomposity and hubris and trying to be somebody important and relevant and all sophisticated and deep and windswept and intelligent and all that. That's what's the matter with them. They're scared to let go of it because they've identified themselves as that. That has become their identity, their place within the delusion of certainty. How's it going, Eyes Wide Shut? Did that person never come back with, you know, or aid? It was aid. Have any of these people got anything to say about why I can have the sun in my sky and New Zealand can have it in their sky and Australia all at the same time? You got to tell me it's bendy magic stuff. Bendy magic stuffs indeed. Swamp gas over Mars. Right. So I don't think anybody's got anything else to add on this matter, have they? I'm just going to get idiotic nonsense from Globe Disciples. Geometry, you know, God, I don't know, mate. I'm not a mason. I don't know. But that's what they've done. They've utilised geometry to give us a concept, to confine us to a certain area by use of geometry, circling the square and all that. That's it, Tony Smith. Has to be separated. The globe constantly try and draw it in. They try and utilise visible and try and superimpose it over tangible. Right, nobody's got anything else to add. I'm going to get off. I'm going to go and watch the football. So, don't know if any of that was of any use to people. I just thought it was interesting. Opportunity just to highlight the nonsense that these people can't seem to differentiate between the real hard, cold, factual, objective world and all the other stuff. Bizarre. Anyway, cheers for being here, everybody. Hopefully that was of use to somebody. Take it easy.